Welcome back to episode 24 of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testouri. On today's podcast, I was fortunate enough to have on Raul Sanchez, the managing director of Clinica dos Arcos, based in Lisbon, Portugal. Raul and I have known each other since university, and he's one of the most intelligent guys I've ever met. But this podcast doesn't just harp on about what success looks like to him. No, he actually talks about how he was battling depression just over 12 months ago, what life looked like, his biggest struggles and challenges. He delves into his 3 favorite non-fiction books. While he's a big fiction reader, we had to delve on the non-fiction business books. If you want a really raw and honest listen, someone who is vulnerable, they take courage in what they say, opening up about the fact they've seen and are seeing a psychologist, then this podcast may be for you. I love you all. Thank you. And enjoy the Grappling Growth podcast.
As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testouri, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy.
Raul, man, welcome to the pod. Thanks for jumping on. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. No, thanks for having me, Joe. It's been a long time.
Has been a long time.
It's good to have one of those friendships that no matter how much time has gone by, you can still connect with each other.
Exactly. That's quality over quantity is what I say.
Absolutely.
So, Raul, my first question as I ask any and every guest that comes on is, what does growth look like to you?
Very interesting question. I think that growth comes in a lot of different manners. A lot of people are, especially the generation now of like Instagram and these people, the younger generation look at growth maybe like just like financial growth or like success growth. But for me, it's more in like the smaller things. So for me, growth is being on a different place every day, not being on the same place that you started your day by. It can be learning something, applying something new, making a mistake can even look at as growth because actually mistakes are probably what makes you grow the more. So now probably what I would say on a business sense or even in a personal sense is just moving the dial, not being on the same position you were today, doing something actionable. So for example, we were in my business or when we started in Clinica dos Arcos. So we're now trying to, as you know, open like a new brand, doing a new brand. And we've not grown in terms of financially, we've not grown in terms of like the growth that we've experienced with more clients, more influx, more customers, but we're growing every day by just developing this brand, by changing. And I think that can be applied to anything. I think you need to see growth as just like not being on the same position, learning something new. And that's pretty much what growth is for me. It's just like where you're today and like what have you done different, and you achieve it day to day. Growth comes from consistency. I think there's a big mistake to want to see growth something like now moment, like we're very much for now. Why need it now? Why is it not producing now? Why is it not being effective now? Like people see growth in like very chunky quantum steps. Like growth goes step by step consistently, and I think people that know that and do consistently well, even if it's little by little every time, they grow so much. And like I see it on, just to finish, I see it on you, for example. You might not see like the growth you've had, but I've not seen you for ages and I've just been following your journey, and like I see where you're now, and like when I met you at uni and I'm like, oh my god, he's like absolutely grown so much. I think that's where like what growth is defined for me, just not being on the same position, just like not being on the same place you were yesterday, to say so.
Thank you. That's kind. And I definitely concur your point there that there's a very good book that I read before. It's called The Compound Effect by, I think, Dan Hardy. And he just mentions the effect of if you were to improve at something 1% every single day, by the end of the year, you would improve by, I think it's 38%, just because you're making those incremental changes. And that's where I think people go really, really wrong. As you said, they're trying to move mountains as opposed to climb little hills and then grow from there. Would you say there's any habits in your life right now that help you grow on a daily basis?
I would say there are quite a few habits I've taken, but I'm conscious they're all my life, but I'm not 100% strict on those habits because sometimes just the day comes through you, and when you're very focused and very kind of set in stone, I have to do this. That can, I think, affect you when you're not doing it. We At some point we can all do it, but for example, I've chose to I read. I've never read the news before. I never kind of had any articles, and now every morning I just read the news and see what's going on within Portugal. Why? Because I learn a bit of Portuguese, which is good for me, and because I work in the healthcare sector, so it's always nice to know how big is for example, now the SNS, which is like the NHS here, is very, very, very collapsed. A lot of doctors are not happy. Not long ago, one of the biggest hospitals here had they had a manifestación, a strike, labor strike, and we managed to capitalize on that by getting some doctors to come and work for us. And it was just because I had read about it and I had the idea to try and contact them. I would say I'm fairly structured. I work out and try to push myself with that. I do something different outside of business. So now I'm learning Portuguese and Italian. And within business, what I always try to do, especially because I've joined now, is just kind of like reading the news just to see what's going on and how I can incorporate. I would say those are my three things just that I do on a daily basis. Like I think also, which might have happened to you, is like growth can be as well a bit toxic if you pursue it very, very, very quickly, very tough because you need to adapt to it. I think trying to make massive change can also come as a hard blow if you're not ready for it. I don't know if that happened to you, trying to scale up too quickly, both on a personal level and a business level.
Yeah, I think to your point, and what you mentioned, that there's a lot of narrative on social media that you need to do things fast, quickly, and powerfully. And if growth doesn't look like this or like that, then you're not successful. And some of the most successful people I know in my life, they're people who are very content at certain levels, and they're not trying to chase the next dopamine hit and put all of these vanity metrics out online. And I think there's kind of a case for a bit more humility out there as opposed to just screaming about what people are doing. When you mentioned it can be quite toxic at times, can you expand upon that point for us?
So yeah, absolutely. So, but this is more like a personal thing. Like I always looked for just what's the next. For example, I wanted to grow my career. I wanted to grow so fast. I was like, after 1 year, I was like, I need the new challenge. I need a new. Uh, I need something else to do. Maybe not reflecting so much on, am I ready to take the next step? Not in a bad way. Like planning is really important, and I think I I did a jump from one job from I was an account executive. I went to an account manager quite soon, and I think I was just not ready for the pressure, and it really kind of like put me on a like even mental stress a lot. I was struggling to sleep. I was struggling to like just get by, almost even like a bit of a mental illness. I was thinking it's because I didn't realize like I wanted so much to go so quickly. I didn't have the basis to like really do things well. It's like, for example, in terms of, and I think it's quite toxic. And again, going back to social media, it's like when you scroll, everyone is so perfect, everyone achieves so much. Even in London, in LinkedIn, everyone posts so much about things when you don't really know how they're experiencing things. And I think you need to take it up a pace. Like life is way longer than you think, and I think that you need to be conscious of like the growth you're achieving now. And as well, like, and it might has happened to you, like if you're constantly chasing, as you said, you never get to actually like enjoy what you've achieved. So is that kind of like, in Spain we say the dog that bites its own tail. Like you're never content, you're always looking, like you're looking in circles, you're like always, what's next, this, oh, he's doing that, like I need to grow this. Like you sometimes you need to be just much more calm and be like, okay, now I know, now I'm ready, let's go. It's a mix, eh? I also think that you need to jump into the water. Like in order to learn how to swim, you need to jump to water. I'm also like, but like you need to be ready to jump to water. I know that makes much sense to you, but yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's
spot
why I
on.
think growth can be toxic.
The dog that chases its own tail. There's a concept that I looked into a couple of years ago. It's called a hedonic treadmill, which is essentially just a never-ending treadmill that we're on, and it's kind of like what we're talking about on social media. Generally, people are just showing the tip of the iceberg, and that doesn't paint a tenth of the picture as to what's truly going on in everyone and our lives. Whereas actually just taking a step back and not essentially comparing yourself to other people all the time, it's kind of the saying, it's only you versus you. And that's something that I try to adopt in my life, because I get caught up in it where I look at people in the exact same industry as me, and I know these guys are making 50, 100 grand a month, and they've probably got good profit margins within their business. But as you said, life is long. And if you're not truly happy about what you're doing, if you don't feel content and purposeful, then what's the point to all of this? And I guess that kind of leads on to my next question then. You're just around the corner to being 30 years old, and I don't want to rub that in because I'm nearly there as well. But what advice would you give to a 20-year-old Raul, or what advice would you give to just a 20-year-old right now who might be a little bit lost and they're just chasing, they're looking for that growth, so to
So
speak?
I, for me, number one advice is don't listen to anyone else. Like don't listen so much to what others think about. Like, and it might be just my personality at one point, but I think like you're at that point where you're like really doubting yourself, and some people have things very clear, but like there's a lot of like noise sometimes. Like people don't agree with what you want to do. Sometimes people like think they know better. You're young. I think like at the end of the day, when you listen to other people, sometimes you might like quiet your own self and you doubt your own self. But there's one person that you cannot lie to, which is yourself. So I say be more confident on like what you want, because at the end of the day, you know what you want. You might just not be brave enough to make the decision back then. So I would say just like listen more to oneself, and also be less scared of making mistakes. Like I think, especially when I was young, I was like very very scared of like doing something wrong or trying something and not being the best at it or not excelling. And you need to try and you need to fail and you need to do things in order to see like there's no better. I know it's quite like philosophical and everyone says it, but there's no better teacher than mistakes. Like, so I would say be a bit less serious about things as well. Like there's always time to change and make things better. Like
Mhm.
if once you've got the right attitude, like sometimes we want to be like have everything well at the first time. Like is this the same? Like is with everything, you need to try. You need to make mistakes. You need to make things well in order to really achieve what you want. I would say those are like my biggest kind of advices to oneself.
Just a
Just
question between there, because you said something interesting. How do you think young people and just people in general can become more confident? What can they do to become more confident?
so I think it's a tough one because like I think confidence comes a lot from like how you've been brought up, like the situations you've had at school. Like, I mean, you're really kind of taking it all in. You don't really know where you fit in. Some people are much luckier and they've got very supportive parents. So, but taking away the background, how can they build their confidence? So, in my opinion, is surrounding themselves with people that they know they can speak up. Like that's so important. Being able to tell to someone like, "Look, I'm having a bad day," or "Look, I don't know this. Like, how can you help me?" Like, not being shy, not being that. Whatever you say. Like, yeah, they might tell you, "Look, what you said is stupid" or something like that, but like in a good way. Like they won't put you down directly.
Hmm.
There's ways and ways of saying things. So surrounding yourself with people that kind of think the way you do and like give you that confidence to express yourself, I think that's very important. I think something and it might be more like physical, but I think as well, like we've left behind a lot the active, like taking care of your body, doing some exercise. I think there's dopamine, that kind of like routine also helps people just to build confidence. When you see yourself well, like you express yourself well, and like you've got much more confidence. Although it's a bit more superficial. Educating themselves, like if you don't know something, read about it, like be prepared uh, about it. And then it's tough because when you're young, you're you're afraid more than anything, or you don't know what you want to do. But I think like having a good support structure, if you're lucky enough to have a great family, if not, go and find good friends, and like not being scared of like speaking up. I think that's kind of like a way of building confidence. I mean, it's hard to say because I would say I've been always confident enough, but I do say so that sometimes it is tough. I don't know if you've experienced something like that, that you've grown in confidence now, that you've got maybe like, you know more what you want, you know more who you want to speak with, and you like surround yourself with like minded people.
I would say my childhood, as a comparison to yours, I really wasn't confident. So when I was in primary school, even secondary school for a bit, I got bullied quite a lot. And I think that for me, if I was to look at anyone who was bullied or someone who isn't confident, I think confidence just comes from experience and doing things. And generally for me, it's about leaning into the uncomfortable. So finding things that are going to make you more confident. You can't just lie down at night and just manufacture confidence through your mind. I believe you need to do stuff in yourself to get more confident. And it's not just going up to a bully, but it's what can you do behind closed doors to make you more confident. So for me, and this is just like a really, really quick personal story, when I was 14, 15, I was overweight and I was just tired of being overweight. And I remember with a friend, a childhood friend of mine, we turned around and we decided to just do laps of this park every single day. And I didn't stop, I didn't miss a day for I think 8 months until I got ill and then I had exams and whatever. But I lost so much weight. And that is something I could do. And I think, like the Stoics say, there are the things you can control and you can't control. And whatever you can do to control the outcome, do it. You can't. I mean, people will always have their opinions of you, and that's fine. And I can't control other people's opinions of me, and I don't care anymore. But what I can
And
do is,
that's a very good, is a very good quick one. Like the Woody Allen said, if you put your happiness in everyone's in when everyone else applauses, you'll only be happy when they applaud you.
yeah,
Like, and you always have that happiness linked to them. It's so, but it's tough to do that. Sorry to interrupt.
no, thanks for sharing, man. And I think to your point there, and I remember I was getting feedback from people saying, "Wow, man, you've lost so much weight, and look at you." And eventually, I I think I tried to get the adoration or admiration from people, and eventually, as I've got older now, I don't care. And equally, it's nice to speak to you and for you to say, "Hey, man, from the outside, it looks like you're smashing it." But again, for me, and I try to be as transparent and honest as possible whenever I post stuff on social media, what everyone sees is the tip of the iceberg. We all have down days. We all have days where things aren't fantastic. But I think similar to what you were saying about growth, it's just knowing that, okay, today was not perfect, but at least I did something that's just making me 1% better each and every day. And I think that's probably the biggest root of confidence for me as a person when I look back on in life. So yeah, no, that's cool for you.
I mean, you did a very confident move, which was starting your own business at what, 21?
Maybe a stupid move, but
And
yeah,
also like confidence in different areas. Like there's some people that are confident, like you've got your all of us have that guy on the group of friends that's confident talking to girls. We've got that guy that's confident jumping from the biggest rock. We've
mm,
got people that approach confidence in their work. They go up to business meetings, they don't care, like they're very, very confident. People that are very confident in going and trying to talk a new language even though they barely speak it, and they are the ones that are going to get better at everything, like when you try things. is literally what you said. When you're behind closed doors, you know there's something wrong, and you don't do anything to change. Like that's the worst, in my opinion. Like you always need to try, always, always, always.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who's pretty overweight, and every time we meet up for a meal and just hang out, it's just the same narrative. And I don't know if he's depressed or if there's anything below the surface, because I don't want to comment. And I think it's so easy to judge someone, but we'll have conversations and we'll always end up, and it'll be a case of, yeah, I want to do this and I haven't changed this. And I think sometimes it's really about having a reason as to why you want to change. If you want to change for external validation, then that will only get you so far. But we've all been there where we said diet starts Monday, or I'm going to start this business. And if you're just doing it because you're doing it for your mum, or if you're doing it for your peer group or your reference group, then that's only going to get you so far. But if you have deep intrinsic motivation, I don't know, it could be a case that you want to see your kids grow up and you want to be a role model for them, or you're fed up of being that fat kid and you're just saying to yourself, you know what, enough is enough. And then eventually you engineer your lifestyle into the way how you want it to look. That's really important. And I think where a lot of people go amiss and when they really go wrong is they're trying to overnight go from this person here
Literally,
all the way to over here. And it's all of these guys that you see on YouTube who are ripped, jacked.
100%,
Yeah, there was no overnight success. It
one
was
hundred percent,
days of just boring graft.
100%. Like people don't see the amount of fail stories people go through before they get to where they are. Like I bet all those people have suffered. I also like, and just a little note that I read a book called The Power of Now, which is quite philosophical, but it says like right now you've got two options, which is be content with what you do because you're not ready to change. Like you accept to yourself, look, just I'm not ready, but I'm content where I am. Or the second option, which is I am not content and I need to do something. The worst option is not being content and not doing anything. That's the worst. You're gonna be the unhappiest, in my opinion, because like you have the I want to change and I'm doing nothing to change about it. Like sometimes the timing might not be right. I don't know. Like for example, let's say like that your friend. Maybe if he now imagine it's Christmas, which you know it's a period which everyone eats the most. Maybe it's not the best time to start dieting. I don't know. I'm just saying. And maybe it's later on. But yeah, I agree. It's tough, and you never know what people are going through as well. Which it always, it always kind of like you cannot judge it. But you can be there to help him, and if he tells you, it means that he wants to change.
Yeah, I think you put it really well of the two components. Earlier this year, this was April, I was traveling, I was in Central America, and I had an amazing month. And I think the reason why I enjoyed that month traveling so much is because I accepted where I was in life. And I think a lot of highly ambitious people like you and I, we're always looking for the thing around the corner. And sometimes it's just about saying, I'm not trying to look around the corner today. I'm here to live in the moment. And I think I enjoyed that month so much because, and I didn't make as much money as I normally do in business, but I looked to myself and thought, okay, what am I optimizing for in life? Because you can't have it all. You can't turn around, drink beers. Not saying I was doing this, but you can't drink beers 6 days a week and then also go to the gym and expect to have abs. It just doesn't work. These two things can't be true at once. And I think
Yes.
a lot of the time people are looking for the best social life, the best results in business, the best fitness and health. And as we were saying just before we jumped on air, there's a cost to everything in business, no matter what you're doing. If you're turning around and you're more free, well, maybe your finances are taking a hit, or you're working like an animal, then your personal life is possibly taking a hit. So it's just being accepting and cognizant of whatever you're leaning into. And the way how I try to operate is in seasons and just going in a really intense period and saying, okay, for the next 2 months, I'm really locking in and trying to follow the Pareto principle. I'll put 80% of effort here, and then that last month I'll start to see the results. So, Raul, I'm curious. And I know with your business, you've come into the family business, and uh, you worked here in the UK, and you moved to Spain. Now you're in Portugal. So it might not just be a time in business, but maybe in your career. Was there a moment in your career or business where you were on the brink of quitting and giving up? Because you mentioned you had a period where you weren't sleeping at night. So how did you feel in those moments?
Well, so many times. I've had them so many times, both working here in the own business and both working at. I had a very, for example, I had a very, very bad period. As I said, I wasn't sleeping. Like mental health was really poor. I actually thought quitting every single day. I'm just not very good at. Not
How
that
long did
I'm
that
not very
period
good.
last?
Sorry,
How long did that period last?
8 months
Eight
of,
months.
yeah, like pretty like extremely shit, like bad.
When was
But
this?
like it was in it was November of 2022 all the way to like April 2023. Like, and it's had never happened to me, but like just work really got on to me. Like always, and I was like every day I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. The conversations I was having with like the retailer at the time, like business wise, were not. It was all in my head because apparently everything was thought I was performing absolutely fantastic and like I got a bonus and everything. But for me, I was just not happy. I was thinking of quitting every single day, but I just kept going. I think that I knew it was momentarily. And that was more kind of like I think growth that had to happen in myself. It was just like a big change. So for example, like here with my dad's business, like we because we operate on the public sector, most of our payments come within like 60, 90 days because the public sector does not pay very well. But obviously most of our suppliers are private, so we need to pay them quite regularly, which gives us a cash imbalance. So in order to overcome this, we use some like credit lines through banks. uh, I'm not gonna bore you with the long story, but long story short, they took this credit line from us on one of the businesses. It's pretty disastrous for us. It would pretty much meant like how are we gonna keep the business going? Like we don't have like our cash balance are just like we don't have anything like is very negative. And at that point, there was many other things like working with your family. As beautiful as it sounds, it can also be very tough. Like having difficult conversations with people you've got such like feelings with. It's not easy. So it was pretty hard. To save so that we've managed to secure a new line of credit and everything. But like when those things come and hit you hard and like you don't know because you're working well, you're trying your best, everything should be going well, and just things kind of like not falling to the place you want them to fall. And like there's always a new fire to put out, especially with this new but yeah, I've jumped a bit around, but that way when I was feeling very personally like very very fatigued, very I was depressed, literally taking antidepressants. So I felt like, oh, let me quit, let me reset. But I just fought through it and really like got through things. And I think like there's two things like there's a solution to everything. Everything has a solution, better or worse. Everything, I mean, except death. That's the only point where there's nothing you can change when you've done something. But after that, like the day after, I see things now much differently because I've what I've gone through. I think I, but like you can always do something tomorrow to try and amend what you've done today. Like, and I think maybe that's the yeah. There's been a lot of tough times to be fair in this job, which requires way more uh, responsibility as much as when I was pretty much uh, working for a 9 to 5, your classic corporate job. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, Raul, I really appreciate you opening up there. That takes a lot of courage. So thank you. I'm curious to. You spoke about a solution. So that period from November 2022 to April 2023 has a good what 5 6 months. What was your solution for getting out of that headspace?
I put many solutions in place. I was Because I never expected, like, I've always been like, as you say, like, everyone sees your happy you all the time.
Yeah.
So I never expected to. I was like, when it first happened to me, I was like, why is this happening to me? Like, I'm not this kind of person.
Just to
Solutions?
interrupt you, was there a was there a distinct moment where you felt you were like,
No.
shit, I'm not myself?
Poof. Yeah, like, mm, all through that period of time, I was like, what's happening to me? Like, this is
What
not.
was the first moment?
Probably, I would say, like, realized it more like with my friends. Like, I was just like not being able. I was not being able to enjoy like moments with them because I was constantly worried like about other things. Like I was not present. I was over worrying about everything. Like from my job, like I make a tiny mistake, I used to like overreact, or I said something to a friend and I overreacted. Like why have I been? It's just like my confidence was an all time low. Like literally like zero. Uh, it was just that feeling. I don't know. Like it's hard. These things are very hard to express. Like I
Mm.
cannot put a finger on like this did it or this other thing did it. Uh,
How do you
but
think you worked your way out of it?
I mean, it's tough. I read a ton of books.
Like what?
So there's two Spanish psychologists. One is called Mariana Rojas, which is called my vitamin person in Spanish, and basically talks about how surrounding yourself with like positive people kind of like is very helpful. The other one was living without fear, which is of a Spanish psychologist, and it's like how do you try, like how do you live without that fear of like that's constantly behind your back. And it's just stories of people that have gone through the same thing and like said, look, it's a roller coaster. Today you're gonna be like this, like this, and you're gonna be walking a dark path, and suddenly you're gonna turn the corner, and it's gonna be light. And I kept reminding myself. I had my twin brother, which I spoke loads to, started going to a psychologist. Um, and I one of the best things I admitted something was wrong with me. Like I was, it cost, boy, it took me a lot of courage to say like to everyone like I don't feel right, like I don't know. But I admitted it, so I was conscious, so I put a solution to it. And it was just that consistency. And that was as well like a switch. I don't know when. Like I just realized it was suddenly April, May, and I just realized I was back to just I don't know, to being happy, to being myself. So I would say if anyone is finding themselves there, like I think it's more normal than we speak about. And I think that we've all gone through it, and it's just it does, like even if you don't notice that, like what we said, small things, like I kept reading, I kept going to the psychologist, I kept doing exercise, I kept trying, and it just one got to a point where it just like all switched in my brain. It's a weird experience. I won't wish it on anyone, but yeah, uh,
Yeah.
strange one.
Well, again, thank you. And yeah, I mean, we've all been in dark places, and I was there myself probably about a year ago, where you look at yourself and you think, how do I get out from here? And I really do believe it does come down to just the small things, micro habits. And there's a really good quote by philanthropist, technologist, so to speak, Naval Ravikant, and he says, if you can't be happy with a good coffee in the morning, you'll never be happy with a yacht. And I think, again, this
Yeah.
is people are always looking for, they think, or we try to engineer our life to the point where we say, when I have this, I'm going to be this. And a lot of it is just, as you said, having your brother there to talk to. And luckily, your twin brother as well, which is amazing. Having a partner or family, and just finding small pockets in the day that can just be your little sanctuary and just a place that you can go to by yourself, I found, just personally for me, has been really important. And I think you said something really well. It's just having the courage to not care about what anyone else thinks and just admit and say, I'm not feeling great, I'm not myself. Because especially as men, and this is why the suicide rate amongst men aged between 18 to 34 is so high, is because we try to be macho. We try to uh, eat the world, so to speak, when in reality, going to a psychologist or a psychotherapist can be one of the best things you can do. And I started seeing a
I am
psychotherapist.
gonna tell you, they are making big money right now. The psychologists are.
Well, they
Everyone
deserve it.
goes to one now. I think we need to start normalizing it.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
I It's so normal for most people. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
Well,
I
because
mean, they do a fantastic job for a lot of people. So they're great.
yeah,
I'm curious. You've mentioned a few books now. What are your
yeah.
top three business book recommendations?
So as I've said, I'm more of a fictional guy, but in terms of non-fiction, business-wise, I liked a lot one that it said it starts with why, which I don't know if you've read
That's
it.
Simon Sinek.
Well, I can't remember the author. We can let me bring it up. No,
Yeah, Simon Sinek.
yeah. So I really like that book
Yep.
because I'm not gonna give them in any specific order, but I really enjoy the book because it talked about basically the beauty of having the of knowing why you're doing something more than what you're doing, like what's driving your brand, what's driving your purpose, like what you want to achieve, like. And it's something that I really try and even like to bring people on board of your idea, like people need to know why you're doing it, like. And it's sounds so simple, but expressing like why you're doing something is tough, even for people. For example, like we're the so my clinic does mainly abortions. Okay, that's the main thing we do now. Quite controversial, but like we're the only private clinic, so everyone thinks that what we do is what defines us, but as to why we do it is because like we're the first one here to fight for women's rights, because a lot of women were dying out of infections, and like they had to travel, like people with literally no resources had to go to other countries to do these abortions. They did them illegally. Like we are a pillar stone to like not even women rights, but like also the women's health and like giving opportunities. So that's that kind of like core value that you need to put within your workforce and within
Mhm.
everyone, because then everyone understands, okay, I work harder but because of this reason. And I think is quite pivotal. There's one which I read, which I can't remember exactly the complete title, but it went around like the art of doing business across cultures. It was kind of like how you to do business across different cultures. And I don't know if you've worked with different people from different cultures, but it's so different. Like
Yeah.
now that I'm in Portugal, and I was reading this book, which was quite good, and it said that, for example, when they were in Israel, they saw that people in Israel are much more direct and like they tell things how they are if they're not happy with it. For them, that's a way of respect. Like I respect you enough to say, but for example, Japan or Korea, I've listened. They were saying that they're much more respectful, so it's quite hard for them to argue with the managerial, with the like C
Mhm.
level people, and how they do it is more through like like emails and like. So I really like the way that spoke, especially now that I'm working in Portugal. Like things are different compared to the efficiencies of London, the fast pace, the decision making, how technologically advanced. Like you wouldn't imagine the amount of people I talk to that I still need to do face to face meetings. So many, like they're not used to it. Like in London, I used to close like I don't know £1 million deals via Teams, and here, if I need to argue with a supplier about £10, I need to go visit them. It's silly, but like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you need to understand how
relationships
people.
quite different.
You need to understand how people are brought up,
Solutions.
like what they think. If not, you're never gonna like really. And obviously, if you learn their language, 10 times better. Everyone likes to make business on their language terms. And then one that really I like because I'm quite bad with it is deep working. I get distracted quite a lot. And like deep working was like, you don't need to work for such long hours pretty much, but when you work, like focus, like get the email out, like focus on one task,
Yeah.
do 20 minutes of one task. And I do realize, like, after 20 minutes of thinking about a problem, or like trying to, the first 20 minutes for me, it's always like very slow in
Hmm.
business. I've got a problem. Okay, the first 20 minutes, I just need to think about it. And then, yeah, so those three books I really liked. I know you've read tons of them. So if you've got any recommendations, 100% I'll take them on board.
Yeah, we'll discuss book recommendations afterwards. There's quite a lot on the Bespoke Brand Developers Instagram, actually. There's one of the thumbnails. So, uh, just to kind of wrap up the podcast, I've got one last question for you. And this is a question that I've taken from Reddit. And just for those of the listeners who don't know, you mentioned the main business that you've got with your family, but you've also mentioned to me about a new business that you're starting up. So, I guess the question I picked out on purpose was to see how you're looking to evolve this new business into a brand. So the question from the internet reads this: a fellow entrepreneur asked, how do I turn my business into a brand? I don't want to compete on price. What's your take on building a brand over a business, and how would a new business not just solely focus on price, because it is a bit of a race to the bottom, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Price cannibalization is like very, very bad. So I like, once you start trying to win people over price, you never really have any loyal customers. They're just with you because of your price. So I don't think it's the best tactic. I agree with him 100%, because you're eating on your own margins. It doesn't really make sense. So how would I go about building? First of all, a lot of, like, I think you need to do a lot of research and preparation to see any white spaces that are within the market you're trying to move in, uh, or what's your niche. Like, what I would say is develop a good mission, vision, value proposition for your customers, and then try and bring all this to life. So how would, I mean, it's tough. How would you do it? But for example, what we're going along with is we've realized that, okay, there's a lot of other brands that offer what we offer, which is private healthcare. How are we going to do it better? So it's, we're going to go for the channels, which are, for example, a lot of expats, which they don't have much, they don't have a doctor that they've got confidence, that speaks good English. So we need to build that brand. So in order to do that, we're gonna target them in terms of like social media. We're gonna go to the embassies to talk to them. We're gonna go to the neighborhoods, which are good, and we're gonna start building it from there, from those clients. We already have quite a few talks with the British embassy here in Lisbon, in order to attract the clientele. But I would say more than anything is like very clear ideas on what you're offering, and a very clear value proposition on how to build the brand. Like, you need to offer them something that they cannot get or could not get somewhere else. I mean, it's a tough question. I don't know if that pretty much answers it.
So a lot of it to do around relationships and differentiation, really.
Yeah, I would say so. Around our differentiation. Yeah, I would say so. And also kind of like with nowadays, as well, just the offerings that you've got, which is pretty much the differentiation part. I would say, yeah, I would say it's probably the two big things that we're gonna focus on. We'll
Hmm.
see if it works.
And for you as a business right now, how do you go about testing new offerings?
So it's hard, but like, we have a lot of, we've done a lot of like surveys to see what people are looking for. They do like, basically you put a lot of surveys on like, what do people think it's missing, for example, within the healthcare system here in Portugal.
Mhm.
Once we see that the demand is there, we've brought up professionals that can actually do what they say are doing, and we go to the main places where people look up for this. So in this case, it's Google, and like, they're called centros de salud. I think they're like your general doctor practice, and we've just we've been quite lucky. Like we've got a good team of professionals, so we've not struggled a lot on giving new offerings. It's true that we've not received the amount of influx patients that, like the amount of customers we would like to. For example, now that we've offered gastroenterology, we've partnered up with good people, and then we've gone basically with helping the recommendations in ours.
Interesting, interesting. Raul, thank you for your time today jumping on the pod. It's cool understanding a bit more about the business and even more on a personal side of things, you delving into personal challenges, things that you've grappled with, not just in business, but in life. This is what this podcast is for, is how can we share light on the challenges that we go through in business and life and give back to the next generation that are going to come up and they're going to be pioneers and pillars of our society. So thank you. Where's best for people to find you on the internet?
So yeah, thanks very much, Joe, for inviting me. And best place probably LinkedIn, I would say, which is Raul Sanchez Alvarez. And
Well,
then
I'll
if they
tag your
wanna,
LinkedIn profile.
if anyone is in Portugal and needs something health related, search Clinica dos Arcos. We give premium. I mean, it's a platform. I need to take advantage and give a shout out.
Absolutely.
Look at Clinica dos Arcos and come here. We'll give you the best reception.
We'll tag your website as well then.
Okay, thank you very much, Joe. Take care.
Thank you so much.